Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the 2022 Chevy Silverado 1500. Now I'm going to make a separate video about the 22, 2500, and 3500. So again, this video is just going to focus on the 1500. Now in today's video we're going to talk about the changes that are coming for 2022, and then we're going to get into whether or not it is worth getting the 2022 considering the changes. With all that being said, let's get straight into the video. So let's get into the changes for the new Silverado 1500. Now, the first major change is going to be to the front fascia of the truck. Now, from what I've read, it doesn't sound like it's necessarily going to be massive functional changes. It's mostly going to be for aesthetic purposes. Some people have complained about the current aesthetics of the front end on the Silverado. And so it sounds like they're just going to move some stuff around. So some of the venting, they're going to kind of move that around a little bit. And then also the badges and the logos, they're going to kind of move that around a little bit just to kind of give it a different aesthetic. So for example, the Chevrolet logo that you can get on some of the models on the front end instead of the bow tie, it sounds like they're going to move that up on the grill so it changes the aesthetics, and then add more venting into the bumper. And so they're just going to do these small little tweaks to make the truck look a little bit different. I imagine with some of the models to make it look a little bit more aggressive. But it really doesn't sound like any of it's going to be majorly functional. It's just mostly for looks to make the truck look a little bit better. Now, aside from that, it sounds like the headlights and the accent lighting is pretty much all going to be the same on the front end. And yeah, that's pretty much everything for the front. Now, on the side of the truck, it sounds like this is pretty much going to stay unchanged, but there will be some new wheel options coming with the truck with some of the packages. And so expect there to just be different wheel and tire setups that you can get with this refreshed version. And yeah, it's better to call it a refresh rather than a redesign. So that was my bad saying that earlier. And then aside from that, it sounds like they're also going to make some tweaks with the aesthetics on the rear bumper as well as the Silverado, just to make it look a little bit different. So most of the changes right now on the outside, at least, are not really majorly functional. They're just aesthetic to make the truck look a little bit cleaner, to make it look a little bit nicer, and I'm sure also to differentiate it from the 19, 20, and 21, right? Because this is a refresh version, I'm sure Chevy's like, okay, we're just going to make it a little bit different so people can actually see the difference, to kind of make it a little bit more worth it. Now, aside from that, the biggest changes are coming to the interior of the Silverado, and this is where I'm excited. So, you guys know from my reviews with the new Escalade that sadly didn't have Super Cruise, but you can get that as an option, that Chevy is going to try to get that Super Cruise system across the lineup. So it sounds like they're going to have the tech in the new Silverado so that it can basically be implemented at a later date, or they're going to offer some models just with it. So it sounds like that might be a major change for 2022 is with the Super Cruise. But overall, it sounds like they're going to improve the tech. So they're going to give a bigger infotainment system for the screen. So kind of expect the whole dash to look a little bit different from an aesthetic standpoint, and then bigger infotainment system, which makes sense, right? Ford has their new big screen. Ram in 2019 did the huge screen with the Limited. And so I think Chevy just wants a big screen to kind of compete. So imagine for them to have a screen that's around 12 inches roughly. And then aside from that, it sounds like they're finally going to give the option of having a digital gauge cluster, right? Ford has their fully digital gauge cluster. Rams is kind of partial, right? It still looks really nice, but it's like analog, and then you've got a little digital screen in the center. And so it sounds like Chevy, though, is going to offer a fully digital gauge cluster in some of the higher end models for people that want something like that. Now, the thing that I'm the most excited for is it sounds like they're going to be redoing the whole interior, and this has been the biggest complaint with the new Silverado. Initially, people complained about the looks, but then after some time and seeing and everything, and I was the same way, I was like, okay, it actually looks pretty good on the outside. But once you get into the interior, you're like, wow, is this 2005 again? Because the materials aren't the nicest, and the controls look identical from older trucks, and so it's just kind of like, yes, this desperately needs an updated interior, just with what the controls look like, and then also with the interior materials. And it sounds like Chevy might finally be doing that for this refresh, and so there's potential that we'll have nicer materials on the dash, door panels, and then also seats as well, especially in the higher end packages. So like the High Country, for example, we might actually get a High Country with like really nice leather seats and a nice leather dash and just a nice overall interior. And so yeah, that is the most exciting change. Now, from a powertrain perspective, and I just want to double check on this, I'm pretty sure that nothing's going to be changing. So still get the 4.3 liter V6, 2.7 liter 4-cylinder, 5.3 liter V8, and then the 6.2, and then also the 3 liter Duramax. So the Duramax still 10 speed, the 6.2 still 10 speed, and then the 5.3 in some applications 8 speed with that always. And then some applications 6 speed, 8 speed for the 2.7, 6 speed for the 4.3. So it sounds like they're not doing anything with the powertrain. They're mainly focusing on making the truck look a little bit nicer on the outside, and then the biggest changes are coming to the interior, where they're going to bring up the interior. And again, there's not a ton of information yet, but it sounds like that is the route that they're going, which is very exciting because the Silverado is already a really good truck. It just needs an interior to go with everything else that's just, you know, nice. Now let's cap things off by getting into whether or not this new Silverado is going to be worth looking into. So first off, it depends on how much Chevy actually updates, right? We have these details right now, but we'll see what actually ends up happening when the truck is put into production. And so here's what I'd have to say. First off, you guys know I'm still a huge fan of Chevy's powertrains, mainly the 6.2 V8. I do like the little Duramax, but that 6.2 V8 is just absolutely amazing, right? It's got really good torque, it's got good horsepower, it's paired to a really good transmission, the 10-speed automatic that's just smooth, quick to shift as well, and it's a big naturally aspirated V8, so it sounds good. And I mean, that's what trucks are all about, right? Is having those big naturally aspirated V8s. And yeah, so I love that 6.2 V8, so the fact that they're keeping that is just a huge plus for me. And then in terms of the exterior with the new Silverado, like I said, it sounds like it's mainly going to stay the same. There's going to be some small tweaks to make it look a little bit different, but I think the truck's pretty good looking, right? Again, the GM counterpart is definitely nicer looking, but the Silverado still is a good looking truck overall. The biggest thing has to do with the interior. If they update the interior, where again, they have the bigger infotainment system, like what it sounds like they're going to do, digital gauge cluster, more technology, and then the biggest thing, a nicer interior, then this truck could actually compete against Ford and Ram in a really serious way. And I know some people might get offended by me saying that the current Silverado doesn't, but I mean, seriously, get into a high country, right? And it's got pretty decent tech, but you look at the seats, you look at the dash, you look at the touch points, and it feels cheap. You get into a Ram and a Ford, and the Ford kind of feels like this high-tech truck, and then the Ram feels like this, a little bit less high-tech, but really nice and luxurious. And so you kind of have just whatever you want, right? Do you want a little bit more high-tech, or do you want really nice and luxurious? And then you get in the Chevy, and you're like, wow, is it 2005, right? It feels dated, and the materials aren't that nice. The seats aren't that nice. The dash isn't that nice. The door panels aren't that nice. All the controls, they just don't look very nice. And so if they update the interior where they give it really nice interior materials, right? They actually spend time from a design standpoint, and they spend some money into materials, right? They give it nice leather for the seats and the door panels and the dash, and they do nice wood trim and just all of that, then this is going to potentially be the best truck that you can buy, because you'll be able to get a big naturally aspirated V8 that has more power, more torque than the other V8s on the market. And also, again, it's a big naturally aspirated V8, right? Ford's EcoBoost is great, but there's a lot of people that still want V8s. They don't want to have a twin turbo V6. And so you have this truck where you're not really conceding anything, because it would have the V8, it would look pretty good on the outside, and it would have a nice, luxurious interior. And so if Chevy does that, I think this new Silverado is going to be awesome. But the only thing is, just understand that the pricing might jump up quite a bit. Right now, if you get like a pretty fully loaded high country, you're like $64,000 roughly, I think, for the MSRP for a four-wheel drive crew cab configuration truck. Whereas with the Ram Limited and the Ford Limited, right, you're over $70,000 with those ones fully loaded. Expect, if Chevy does add these updates, expect the pricing to be similar to Ford's and to Rams, because they're going to be spending more money into the trucks, and the cost of the truck will go up. And I guess that's the other thing that I forgot to talk about, but I'm mentioning it right now, is understand that the truck's probably going to be more expensive if they do these updates. If they don't, then the pricing will jump up a little bit, but not a massive amount. So that's my opinion on it. If they actually update it, if they give it a nice interior, I think it's worth it. If they don't, well, it's still a good truck, but it's just not as good as the Ford or the Ram from an interior standpoint for sure. But that all being said, that's going to sum things up for today's video. As always, if you're stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. And if you do feel like my videos are of value to you, I'm going to include a link to my Patreon in the description down below. I'd really appreciate your support over there. And yeah, I'll see you guys.